Let's start.
Here we go.
How are you? It's good to see you.
You too. And I am good. Yeah. You're looking good.
Thank you. You too. The pandemic works for us, and I don't know. It's terrible.
No, but it's funny because we're doing this podcast on this theme, and so it's good, but it's also challenging. And I hope that this podcast can kind of identify some of that juxtaposition of, like, living and doing, carrying on and being joyous, but meeting challenges that are very real and new in some ways. So when you say, right? So it's not just I'm good. It's, there's some challenge in that good to work for it in new ways.
Wait a second. Wait 1 second. I know what was happening before.
Okay.
I know why it was, why they could hear your echo.
Okay.
It wasn't you. It was me.
Okay.
You weren't on my AirPods. So everybody listening, Clubhouse, I've got the tech. See, I can teach an old dog new trick. All right. So now you're on my AirPods and they shouldn't be able to hear you echoing.
Okay. Cool. So, but anyway, very nice to see you, and I'm happy we're gonna wrap here.
I know. This Yoga Sutra, when you asked, it was the first one that came to my mind, which shouldn't be a surprise because I'm a flippin' writer. I mean, words are my thing, right? If you because you've received emails from me, I tend to be wordy anyway, but I also choose my words often. I try to. Yeah. And actually speaking is harder for me because written, I feel like I can be a lot more clear with my words than spoken. Sometimes something will slip out and I'm like, oh, that's not what I meant. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why don't you explain Yoga Sutra 3?
Okay.
0.17.
All right. So, so for one thing, I always look at a sutra in two distinctly different senses. And one is I take it to to what I call its lowest common denominator, right? It's like it's most ordinary, it's most practical, it's most worldly, and in a sense, you could say, or its widest interpretation possible, and because I'm trying to use it, right? But and then on the other hand, these things, every sutra is very deep, very profound, and it's pointing to it's an exploration of the mind and of the workings of the mind and consciousness, and from the whole spectrum of consciousness, and it's looking at spiritual consciousness, really. And so and when you try to see the spiritual consciousness, it can get very abstract and difficult to understand. And so that's why I like using both, like finding what is this saying, just like in an ordinary sense, and then what are the real possibilities if you really dig into the words and the Sanskrit and how the different philosophical schools and stuff are using the terms. And so for me, the most ordinary Swami Satchidananda is a beautiful person to present you with that. And I love his interpretation of it. And I'm going to read it to you, of this sutra. So he says, simply, the sutra means a word, its meaning, and the idea behind it are normally confused because of the superimposition of one upon the other. And so by a sanyama on the word, so sanyama just means a deep study of the word or sound produced by any being, knowledge of its meaning is obtained. Okay, and so those three words, though, are very deep. Shabda, artha, and pratyaya. But he breaks them down into the just the word, the meaning, and it's the idea behind it. Okay, and that's what, like, Peg and I, we talked the other day, and we just really got fired up over we started with the word normal, right? And your recent writing, and how you wrote, like, and it's a kind of buzz thing that it's like some people are like, I can't wait to get back to normal, and other people are going, what? Freaking out on that statement, saying they're saying either they don't like the past normal, and so we don't need to go back to that. In fact, we need to go somewhere new. But then, and your point, you had several cool points in your writing, and one was just trying to, like, what is normal, and like and that it doesn't really exist in a way that, and you can see it in nature, that because there's constant change, that the idea of what we would think of as normal, like you had the seasons kind of in there, so that when it's fall, it gets colder, and then it snows in the winter, and like these sort of
except in Montana.
Yeah,
because we only have, except in Montana, because we
no, but except for everywhere. There's always anomalies.
Except for everywhere.
Yeah, there's always anomalies, right? And and so then so what we're really looking at then is that it's like, what I love about this sutra is that it makes exploring the words that you use and the assumptions you make about them central to your practice. Okay, and this is so important because we're constantly kind of going on pre-assumptions and habits and kind of conditioned responses to everything, to the words we're using, and that translates into like what we do on the mat, so how we do our postures, how we breathe, how we think and respond and act, and so what it's saying is that those are confused because we don't really study, or we get confused, and we're not able to hear what the whole world is saying to us. We don't understand because we've confused the word, the meaning, and the idea that we have behind it. And so we've got to like take the time to separate those different things out and really analyze them.
It was so interesting. Megan and I were doing a course, and I wanted to use the word mistake. I think I was just saying, like, mistakes are part of the process, or don't be afraid to make mistakes, or whatever way I was using it. Megan said, ooh, can we think of another word other than mistake? And I was like, why? Because everyone makes mistakes, like mistakes are part of it. And she said, it really brings up people. It triggers an emotional response when you say mistake, and people don't like the word itself will trigger something. So we did a little experiment. And when I said to the class I was going to use the word mistake, they immediately responded with what Megan had said. And that is, like, it immediately took them someplace emotional. It was an unconscious, in some ways, reaction that you became conscious of, but it wasn't really broken down. And that's where this whole idea that the word, the meaning, and our perception of it get all confused, and we have a reaction that isn't always conscious or deliberate or distinct or clear. Yes. And like when we're thinking about communicating, if I use the word mistake a lot with people, and I might be thinking of it in one way, I think of it as a very positive thing. It's how we learn. We make mistakes, and actually that's how we grow. And I think that's what I was saying, was like, that's a part of the learning process, is kind of recalibrating after those. So I was like, we're thinking of other words. We were trying to find agreeable words, missteps, trial and error, I think is what we came up with. Trial, it's a constant process of trial and error, because mistake had emotional baggage with it.
Yeah. Well, and obviously so does normal for a lot of people.
Obviously.
Right. But see, but the thing is to me, it's a very delicate conversation because we have to be careful that, like, because there's words that are becoming like sort of taken off the table, like mistake or ideal or standard or normal, because we have these negative associations with them, right? And so, but we don't want to diminish our language. It keeps getting smaller and smaller, right? And so this is part of what I feel like the sutra is getting at. It's like sort of, and this is what we're trying to talk about here, but it's challenging to talk about, right? Because, but let's go back to the word mistake again, because to me, it's something I've worked on really hard in my teaching, because I definitely noticed that sort of, I call it like, there's sort of, I put it in these really crude terms at first, but it's like no versus yes. And so a mistake is, pointing out a mistake is a way of saying kind of no, that's not the way. And to me, you, just like I'm agreeing with you, you can't just remove pointing out the wrong way. Like if you do that, it's such a limiting thing. But at the same time, then I've worked so hard to be aware of, okay, if I'm going to say no, then what is yes? Or how do I articulate what we're going to do on the new try? And what's the correction? And so you don't just stop with no. And you and me, we have a history, right? Remember the no, Peg. And
oh my God, yes.
Yeah, but that was some years ago, and I really turned that around, because it doesn't, I feel like in the end, it might be totally true that it's no, but still you want the person to hear your receive your guidance. And so you've got to figure out a way to point out the yes without diminishing the learning, basically, right? Because
well, I think what I'm hearing is that, and also what I've experienced is that we have to be conscious of what the meanings the word holds, and various perceptions. Like as a teacher or a counselor or even a human being in a relationship, we want to be aware of the words that we're using and what they might conjure for other people as well. Not that we would take them out, but that we can have, even, to me, I don't see it as getting narrower. I see it as getting bigger. Use different words, find different ways of saying things.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, okay, the no isn't resonant. Like that's bringing up maybe an emotional reaction, even though, yeah, you do have to we are recalibrating all the time. Part of it is, making mistakes and figuring out, I mean, sometimes the best way to find a better way is to find the wrong way. We know that's not the direction, we go a different way. I mean, those are good things, but the words we use around them, by being conscious of various perceptions and meanings and what people are thinking when you say it, just forces us to use other words too, to make it, that we can expand our own vocabulary. One of the good things is, like, Robert and I were talking about it before I got on the phone call with you. We were talking about our first word, which was discipline. And he and I were going back and forth, and he said something, what he thought it meant. And I rephrased it back to him, what I thought I heard him say. And he said, yes, but, and he got a little bit more clear and he added more. So I got a better understanding of what the picture he had of discipline in his mind, what he was trying to convey, so that I could understand the language. Right. And so clarifying and bringing clarity, it allows us to grow our toolbox, because I think sometimes we use words and we assume, because words are great because they can encompass a whole lot of different meanings, and they're efficient, you know, we can use a word and it conveys something, but then we get lazy. We use the same word, you know, and we don't realize the very many meanings that's for other people. And then for us, we also have to be aware of what they're triggering in us. Like, the first reaction of a word, especially a triggering word, is an emotional reaction. So it's not even from the brain. It's not even like the definition. It's like how it makes us feel based on an old experience usually. And discipline is, I think, well, let me just say this. I think normal is actually happening. I think people are really anxious about going back to normal, because we got a new normal now. So we got a new routine and a new thing. And now we're like going back, which doesn't seem normal at all. It seems actually kind of foreign because we've traveled away. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, anyway, so the word normal is triggering people's anxiety over change again. But discipline is a good one.
Okay. So I want to break down like discipline for a moment, just like, because it's so connected to practice too. Like tapas is the Sanskrit word that's sort of equivalent to discipline, and you had told me a little bit earlier that, like, you put that out to people, and there was so much negativity around the word discipline. And if you and you see, so to me, what I do in my own self, in my own practice, is I go through the exact process you just mentioned, which is I'm using a word, and I've got an emotional reaction, or I've got a working, this is how I use that word. Okay. And, or maybe it's more than one way, but it's set ways. Okay. And I'm always, every time I go to the dictionary and I look up that word, what I get usually is, one is I get sort of verification, or some kind of like, oh, okay, I can see why I went there emotionally with it. I understand that. And then, but then I see that it's usually got a more, either the first meaning is not that meaning, that the connotation, or the what I got from it is more secondary actually than primary. And then the word is way more beautiful, and kind of embracing a broader, or somehow more profound, or more useful spirit than I was attaching to it, right? And then I also get this is what I think is super cool, Peg, is that I get the idea that your definition and your use of words changes, and it's supposed to. So you're not supposed to get stuck using a word in the same way, and then it's like, oh, that triggers this in me, so that's that forever. You see, and it's like, no, I can grow into a new context of the word. And so, like, discipline, so I'm just going to go through a few of the definitions of it. And so it's like the practice of training people to obey rules, or a code of behavior. And then, so that's like, that's somewhat neutral, right? I mean, but it can, if you're kind of rebellious and you don't like to be told what to do, then that already will throw you off, right? Because it's like trying to get people to obey rules. Okay, so, and then, but it goes worse than that. It goes using punishment, to correct disobedience. That's discipline, right? And it's, but listen, but then here goes this, which is, it's an activity, exercise, or regimen that develops or improves a skill. Now that's why I like discipline. It's just simply, right? It's so simple, actually. It's just an activity or an exercise or a regimen that develops a skill. It's so beautiful, right? That, and so pertinent to what yoga is. It's just, right?
Well, interesting, because in my little informal Instagram survey, discipline and practice for many became synonymous. So that was something, there was some overlap there. A lot of people describe discipline as practice and practice as discipline.
Right.
On the other hand, and I love the fact that you went to the dictionary. So isn't that what this Yoga Sutra is saying? It's saying, get clear.
Yes.
Start to take apart the threads. And part of that is looking at the definition. You went for the definition. You know where I go? To the root, where it came from. I am obsessed at finding where words come from so that I can understand, just like you said, I want to understand where I get this feeling from. Why does this bring this up in me? Where, and I can understand it. Oh, I read the definition. I go back to look at the root and see how did it get here?
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And I went, and the first one was a verb, and it was treatment that corrects or punishes. So ew. And then it goes to a noun in Latin, and it's much more beautiful, right? It's pupil, student, or instruction. And the idea, though, what happened is the two got blended. So it's teaching as a way to correct or punish. That's many people associated discipline with fundamental parenting styles.
Yeah.
So you're going way back, discipline a child, discipline your dog. I thought at least 3 or 4 people said, I have none. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is why it triggers it in me. I can't even tell you how many times I've been told I need more discipline, or if only, in fact, I can remember, you know what you need? Discipline, from college professors to yoga teachers. And obviously, if there's consistency in message, there's something to be had there. But what it ended up leaving me with was not something specific, but rather a generalized judgment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do you know what I mean? It was something I was lacking, a defect. So immediately when someone says discipline, I no longer think of the actual definition of the word. I just think of my emotional reaction. That's something I'm not. That's something I'm bad at. It's something I'm supposed to be, but
right. Yes.
And not. And so then when I think about it, I was like, well, actually, if we got more specific instead of less and use generalized, I thought about this in terms of me, why does discipline rub me wrong? And partially it's because of the emotional reaction that comes from being told. But really, I feel like discipline is remembering what's important and behaving in a way that reflects that. And just that there's things that go into it, effort, attention. And certainly I could use a little bit more staying power. And so I can see those, those are skills, like you said, I can develop staying power, attending longer, being more focused, could definitely be something I am constantly working on. But now it no longer sounds like something I'm just not, and some way of conformity, you need to obey the rules, or you need to do this because I said so. It's more like, yeah, I quit a little early a lot of the times. I could use a little bit more staying power. I'm working on that.
Yeah.
Or concentration. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me, that's
Yeah.
the tapas, is that the tapas is the friction that coming and facing yourself and going, yeah, these things are true about me. These are things I want to work on, and it's going to take effort to work on them. It's going to take action. It's going to take, all right, discipline. What do you want? I mean, yeah, sure.
Well,
you know, now I can use the word discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so for me, then if you look at the tapas, so tapas has really negative implications, right? So it means penance, self-inflicted torture,
austerity, right?
Yep, and pain, suffering, severe meditation, bodily mortification, and okay, and so those are the most negative that I, in my little summary, and which they're very negative, and but they see, to me though, it's weird how I come from it, because I tend to come from liking the word discipline and liking the word tapas, and not, and I won't say that I feel like that with every word, but like I'm not on the side of the fence that just the word discipline scares me, right? It's more, but so, but I'm a teacher, so I partly have to understand that. But I also, I have felt the negative effects of discipline and tapas in my practice and in my teaching. And like, it's a very, it's a kind of historic place that tapas came from, you know, like yogis basically depriving themselves brutally and radically to turn away from the physical world, and thinking that it was like cruel to be kind, kind of like that this was going to be an effective way to lessen your suffering, actually, because the attachment to the worldly life and the desires and consumption and things, that those, we can't underestimate what a strong hold indulgence has on us, and the harm that it brings us. And so to go to a place of tapas, like that can go all the way to this other extreme of harm and like torturing yourself, to me, I'm still going to entertain that concept very seriously, even though it has a deep shadow, right? And so it also means, in the more positive sense, it means deep meditation or concentration, and it also just means fire and heat and warmth. And you see, this is the other thing that I feel like I have a real strong feeling about, that I feel a bit of a pioneer in it. Maybe that's my own self-perception, I don't know. But I feel that, you see, the yogis of the past did their best, okay? And it's always evolved through time. And now at the present, it's also evolving. We are evolving it. And so it's not in every sense, the series, everything that we're doing in our practice is not like the 10 commandments written in stone, and we're trying to live up to that. And they did it better than us in the past, or they were the full-on example and they presented it whole. No. That is not it. And I mean, in the near past, like your teacher and your teacher's teacher, and way back. Okay. And so, but we are evolving it forward now. And so I don't want a future in yoga that doesn't have the word tapas or discipline. Okay. I want tapas, and so I'm going to remember the negative impulse, like the bed of nails and the walking for 13 years with your arm raised above your head until it's withered and things like that. Okay, we're not going to go there. Or doing postures and series that are totally beyond your genetics or your experience, or that there's many ways we torture ourselves, and our tapas is not positive, and it can cause us to basically rebel against tapas and think that it's something harmful or not to be trusted. And to me, so we need kind of keep redefining tapas and celebrating. To me, the most beautiful image that I can think of is the Native American, the vision quest. See, that's how I think of tapas. It's like you take time to go off by yourself. You don't eat and drink. It's not time for that. It's time for inward reflection and looking within yourself for your duty and your mission here, and to get serious about what you're doing here in this life, and to be able to respond to your circumstances. Okay, and then you perform tapas for self-knowledge that you're going to share with the world. Okay, and so a certain amount of restraint and discipline and deprivation and even penance. Like, you have to realize that when we go through our day, we're like what you're saying, there's mistakes being made that we kind of have to purify, and it's real. And so we want to find the way to do that as a celebration and without inflicting harm on ourselves.
Well, okay, so I'm listening to you, and I'm laughing over your bed of nails analogy, and but I am thinking to myself, partially, to me, tapas is like an everyday thing, or hopefully not completely, but the bigger the mistake, like, for example, I say something or do something that hurts someone, right? And maybe it's not my intention. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just being small in that moment and I've done something wrong. And I know I've done it wrong. You know when you've done something wrong, like when it is your fault, like legit. Your face, I mean, you can feel it. Tapas, you don't have to explain it to me. My face gets red, my heart, I just feel awful. It is such an uncomfortable feeling when you know that you've done something wrong. And I'm not talking about like you skipped a pose in practice. I'm talking about like you spoke and maybe out of anger or whatever, and you hurt somebody. And then you feel that like awful feeling. So you can do one of two things. Tapas to me is not escaping that feeling. That feeling is the heat of what's happened. And you have to kind of stay with it and move and do what's necessary to correct it, whether it means owning up and taking responsibility.
I know, but Peg, hold on. That's, yes, but see, but practice, you see, practice basically gives you the strength and the power to not escape. Okay, so you can't just expect that you'll do that. See, that practice is like a training to do that, and that's where it can derail. Yeah, just because you have to check you have to check your impulses, right? And because I hear you, I'm with you that definitely tapas is the non-escaping when you either want to lash out or sort of misbehave in some way and you're going to hurt somebody or yourself, or you've done it and then you got to like look at it, right? but it's also, it's a preparation for having the power to do that. I feel like, too. Not, right? Because
yeah, no, I definitely think it's that. Yes, I do think it's that time set aside. I think it's that mindful, whether it's a physical practice, it's in many ways. I think that you have to set that time aside. I think it's important that we sit with those things and you practice those things. Maybe I feel like the asana practice is a little less threatening. Like you can practice it in an asana practice and, you haven't really harmed anybody. You can like see those things come up, feel the heat of the moment, your need to escape or your wanting, whatever those things are.
Yeah,
and you can work them out on a mat, but they're a little less like, they're actually a little less heated than when you've actually done.
But they have to have some heat behind them too, like both, like that. Right? When you practice, you have to be attached to it enough so that it raises up those kind of feelings in you that would cause you to want to do something that needs correction or
that's what you're saying. You get used to it. That friction has to be in that every day. There is friction. I get that. Yeah. There is that friction.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna throw out our next word and I'm gonna actually tell a story around it to introduce it.
Okay.
The next word is going to be modification.
Right.
And modification, when it was interesting because my husband's word when I said modification was, just simply a synonym. I think he said adaptive. But I remember modification, many people responded with limited, don't, and then a lot of like permission, like we should be giving permission, they're necessary, it's innate, blah. But you can tell that when you get to the yogis, there's a whole bunch of shit tied up with when we say modification. It brings up, even the word adaptive brings up a lot of things for people. I remember this very clearly. I don't know if you'll remember it or not, but about 6 or 7 years ago, I was in the yoga room with you in the MYSORE room. And I was practicing next to a friend and we wanted to know how we could exit the Viparita Dandasana. Like we wanted some help with that. So we asked you, hey, can you tell us how? And you said, you gave us some options. Could use a block. And I remember you walking away and my friend saying, I'm not using no fucking block. And with that, she did the exit perfectly. And I was like, yeah, I'm not using no freaking block. And I fell on my back. So, so totally didn't work for me. And it was, and then I think that next day you asked me not to practice next to my friend anymore. Probably a really, in fact, we got separated. It was a funny story because I'm remembering, but that is sort of the idea. I'm watching my dad who needs to use a walker and will not. There is something about that idea of using something, even though my dad is handicapped, has been for a long time. He's also 86 or 85, 86 now. He's like, a walker would help him get around. We could actually do more if he would use the walker. But for him, it is that idea. It triggers the limitation. It highlights something that he sees as a deficit. And that is, by the way, not how the dictionary defines modification at all.
Yeah.
It just says, right, the act of altering in character, form, or function. And then that's the old, of course, I went with the root word. That's what the old way was. And then modern times says that we alter it usually to make it work better.
Yep.
So like, it's not just, but you say modification in a lot of circles, not just yoga circles. I just gave you two, my dad, and you get this like feeling of there's something wrong with me. If I have to modify, alter, whatever, it shows I am limited or not doing it correct.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm so bummed that it has that implication. So much of my teaching is directed at, well, partly it's reversing that, but also it's more than that, because that's sort of it's the no part of it. The yes part is what I focus on, is like all the advantages that you get by modifying. And I want, if you don't mind, I could speak a little bit about that, because it's super important to me.
Please do.
Well, I just love for one thing, it's just like what you said, a modification is simply something that has changed slightly, especially to improve it or make it more acceptable or less extreme. See, less extreme is such a good,
I like that.
very, very important thing. And so the thing is that how I approach the postures is, for one, they don't make it into the series or like into common use over a long period of time, like, or one of the criterion that makes them last, like triangle and shoulder stand and Janu Shirshasana, Navasana, is that they are impossible to perfect. Okay, so, and that, of course, we all have our like strong poses where we can sort of approach an ideal, and then we have our weaker poses. And but the thing is that the asana, no matter who you are, forces you to make concessions. Okay, and so a concession is something given in recognition of a difficulty. Okay, and so what happens is that we all concede something. So we don't do a pose with perfect alignment, perfect lines, perfect breathing, and so we end up doing something. We modify it, we adjust, and so if you throw out the word modification, then you do what I call modifying by default. You do what your body does, and you assume that that's the best way to do it. And so, but to me, what I've seen is that the best way to do it is to choose your concessions. Oh, there it is. Okay, and so this is beautiful. Okay, because what I have found is that most people can get what I call the essence, the swarupa, and you could almost even call it the shabda, that word that's in this sutra, because it's getting at the core, the root of it. And what we end up doing is focusing on the superficial details, the ones that I'm ready to concede much faster than average. And because I want to get to this essence, and then I am free to see, because get back to what you said, Peg, which is that people don't want to modify because they feel that then they're a failure, or that they're less than, that now they don't get to do a good, or they can't do a good version of the pose or something. You see, and to me, you see, I'm not graced with one of these super strong, super flexible bodies. Okay, and so that is partly like, and I might have a whole different philosophy if I was, but me, I have to work very hard and make a lot of concessions. And so to me, but what I have found is this beautiful perfection within the modifications that I do. And I want to read to you the definition of ideal, because this is key in the whole subject of modification.
I knew you were going to get to ideal.
Okay, so, but an ideal, so of course, and it's one of those negative words that people basically, many people want to just throw it out. The moment they hear it, they hear perfectionism, they hear an external standard that they need to live up to, and that they're always going to not feel adequate around. Okay, but listen to this. This is the first definition of ideal too. This is the right off the top of the list. It is, listen, this is so beautiful. Satisfying one's conception of what is perfect, most suitable, or what constitutes very good. That is all. It's satisfying your conception. It's not an outer conception. It's your conception of what constitutes perfect or most
suitable.
Or suitable.
You said suitable.
Yes. Or just if it's perfect's too much for you, then what's very good? Yeah. You see, and this is, I love this. And you see, like, this is my whole practice. This is how I operate. So I do conceive of the ideal. I do conceive of, I apply a standard. Okay, and what is a standard? It's just simply a level of quality or an attainment, and it's an idea or a thing used to measure. Okay, and so this is practice. And what's amazing to me is like binding in a twist. Okay, to me, I may not grab my arm around my back in Marichyasana C, and yet I don't have a problem making that concession, and because to me the perfection is in how I ground my legs and how I work with my arms in relation to my legs and how I rotate my spine. Now there I can find this beauty and this amazing kind of objective in practice, right?
Yes, but what you're saying is conscious. So I like what you had started off with. Modifications, adaptations, they happen inevitably. We are constantly adapting.
Yeah.
I mean, our bodies do it physiologically. There's, acclimatization, like our bodies will naturally acclimatize to outside variables. And some of that is like important naturally, but also in the yoga practice, we will naturally adapt. Our bodies will do what we're going to do. But to make it conscious, and I can give a good example, oftentimes we have this idea in back bending, right? Like, we're trying to achieve something or make a shape or whatever, and you'll see legs go really wide. Or how about this? This is a good one. Jump throughs, when we make our hands super wide because we're trying to get our legs through our hands, our body through our hands. So we think by making our arms super wide, but it's unconscious. People just do it over and over, and it can wreck your shoulders, right? And over time, taking your hands super wide outside your shoulders is going to put some damage there over the wear and tear. But it's not conscious, it's unconscious. It's like this idea that I want to get my body through. So your body is adapting to achieve some kind of arbitrary ideal. All right, like that, because that's not a real ideal from what you just explained. And that is an outside, like, this is the way it's done. But if you modify, like maybe it's like you bring your hands to where they need to be under your shoulders, but maybe your feet don't go all the way through at first. They don't go smoothly. Like you have to like get to the place where you can and then move them through. That is a deliberate, or maybe you put your hands on blocks a few times, or whatever it is, but you do it consciously.
Yeah.
Because right? And that which it's not an unconscious thing that becomes a habit that your body is adapting unconsciously, but a conscious adaptation
that
is suitable for you.
exactly. And you can also it can make you feel better if you're like, so you got to use blocks to jump through with your arms the proper distance apart. And you can go, and that's a concession, darn it. Like, but it's like, okay, but what's the alternative? So, right, it's like, if you know you're going to make a concession, then at least you can, it is, darn it, you wish you could do it perfect. Of course, you have the ultimate strength and flexibility, but you don't. And so, and this is the thing though, that I really appreciate about this sutra, and just that idea of satisfying your own conception, you see, and when, so that sanyama, it really, that's the spirit of that word, right? It's two words, like samastitihi, sam, and yama, like the yama, the first limb, the restraint. And so it's like complete restraint, or it's like this very deep focus. And that is what you are doing in your practice with all the different transitions, the asanas, and how you get into the asana, what you do when you're in it, but then it goes to your language, the words that you're using, and the way that you're communicating in the world, and how you really are going to take a deep analysis, a deep observation, and a deep commitment to growing and to kind of expanding into new and larger kind of expressions of these things, right?
And it's not just as students. I was thinking, as a teacher, and I'm not talking about as a yoga teacher, like as a teacher in previous life, what you're taught is to modify your own behavior. The goal was for learning. So even as a teacher, you modify, the way you say something, you say it different ways, you offer different ways some people can learn. You're not going with your own personal mode of operation or your own unique experience with it, because it's bigger than that. And so you continually modify your language and your teaching approach as to help someone else. I mean, that's the teaching role too. I mean,
Yeah.
and you would think we would do these things and we do them so naturally. It's just, and David, this is the sad part, is that we are out of time as far as the next word. And the next word, of course, what it is tradition. That's that next word. And that's that could take us.
No, I know. I have to tell you one more thing though.
Go, please.
Okay. So, because this is so amazing about the whole thing, that I want to try to, remember I opened this by saying that, so you can look at the word in terms of what is its deepest Yoga Sutra application. It's, and listen to this idea of shabda, of the word. Okay. And the next one, artha. To me, I see that it's like a ladder. Okay, so that the pratyaya is like your conviction or your belief, and it's like your ascertainment of the meaning of the word. And so it's the most gross. And then you're stepping through to the meaning, to a more deeper meaning that's not your personal meaning. It's the meaning. It's a more broad kind of objective meaning. But then the shabda is the root. It's like the thing before you attach any words to it, right? And so, but the whole thing is directed towards dharma, if it's a spiritual thing, okay? Because you're always trying to find the deepest, kind of most profound application of language. And we're not here just to play around. We're not here for random purposes in these bodies for our time. We're here to do good things and to help shape a better world and to serve others and define these spiritual principles and live by them, right? And so like, listen to this, just shabda. It means, well, for one, it means verbal communication or verbal testimony, but it goes further. It says that knowledge of dharma, knowledge of your dharma, it can only be attained by verbal testimony, by the medium of language. Okay, and so this is the deep connection between the asana practice that we're doing that it's silent, right? You're not talking, but you have to go ahead and take that stuff that you learn and verbalize it. You actually have to put it into language. You have to use your voice. Okay, and sorry, I'm almost done, but I have to just tell you one other thing about it. Because
no, this is good stuff. Keep going.
Yeah. You see, this is another, listen to this. So it goes as far as saying that the verbal testimony is the only means of right knowledge that can be used to know the nature of the invisible effects of actions. Okay, so see, this is the thing, is like, and you see, just the fact that we're into yoga, asanas, Peg, many of us, we're more introverted and we are not as given to language. Okay, but this represents a super frontier, though, that we have to battle within ourselves to find the words and to really define our words and define our communications and develop them, and with the idea of getting to the most deepest parts of ourselves, and in our own self and in our sharing. And one last thing is that the word artha, I just want to, what's amazing about it is that it means like the true sense or the meaning, but it also means treasury in terms of what is helpful to humanity. And it's born from dharma and buddhi. And buddhi is your intelligence. Okay, and so we're not, and we've been saying this all along, but we're just pointing it out that you're trying to evolve with your words and your language and get to a higher place as a human being and represent all of humanity in that, and helping shift it and getting us all to grow, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was awesome. I think right there is there's so many things to explore, but I love that we just took just two simple words, and just really uncovered layers and talked about it. And that's what it's saying, is that we need to dive deep into those and be deliberate, and because that opens up our ability to communicate and make meaning and bring meaning. And that's
able to be creative and playful with it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, for the podcast, I guess we can call that a to be continued.
Yeah.
Let's call it a to be continued.
Yeah.